My girlfriend insisted on science in the relationship to accuse me of cheating with her own sister. They almost succeeded, but there was one thing. I've been with my girlfriend for 2 years now, and if I had to sum her up in one word, it'd be jealous. She's the type who gets suspicious if I even glance at a random woman on the street, or take too long replying to a text. It's exhausting. I'm not the kind of guy who cheats. Never have, never will. I don't give her reasons to act like this. I don't flirt with other people, don't hide my phone, don't sneak around. My life's an open book for her to read, but she still finds ways to turn every little thing into a conspiracy. If I'm 5 minutes late coming home from work, she's already convinced I was with someone else. It's been like this since day one. The weird part? She's the one who's always acting shady. I've caught her texting guys I don't know, claiming they're just friends or co-workers. Her phone's always buzzing at odd hours, but she brushes it off. I've never had solid proof she's cheating, though, just hunches. And accusing her feels impossible. She's so busy pointing fingers at me 24/7 that I can't get a word in. Every time I bring up something she's done, she flips it back on me like a pro. It's a constant game of defense, and I'm tired of playing it. Things hit a breaking point a few months ago. I'd had enough of her double standards. I saw her laughing at some guy's message on her phone, and when I asked who it was, she got defensive. Said it was nobody important, and told me to stop being paranoid. That was rich coming from her. So I called her out, told her it looked like she was the one talking to strange guys. Instead of explaining, she turned it around and accused me of doing the same thing. No evidence, no reason, just her usual nonsense. That fight lasted hours, and by the end, I was done. Our relationship felt like a complete circus, and I told her we should just break up. She didn't like that idea though. She begged for a pause, instead said we needed time apart to see how much we miss each other. I wasn't sold on it, but after a few days of her pleading, I gave in. Big mistake. So we started the pause. It was her idea, and I figured it might actually give me some breathing room. The first few days were quiet. No texts from her, no calls, no random accusations popping up on my phone. I went to work, hung out with my buddies, and tried to enjoy the break from the chaos. It felt good not having to explain every move I made. I wasn't sure if I even wanted to get back with her at that point. The jealousy, the arguments, it was all too much. I started thinking maybe this pause would just turn into a permanent split. She didn't see it that way though. About a week in, she started texting me again. Nothing big, just little messages like, "Hope you're doing okay," or "Thinking about you." I kept my replies short. I didn't want to dive back into the mess we'd been in. But I could tell she was testing the waters, trying to figure out where my head was at. I wasn't giving her much to work with. What I didn't know then was that she was already cooking up a plan. She wasn't just sitting around missing me, she was plotting something to prove she'd been right about me all along. Her sister was part of it. I'd met her sister a bunch of times before. She's a couple years younger, lives nearby, and always seemed nice enough. We got along fine, but I never thought much of her beyond that. She was just my girlfriend's family. Turns out, my girlfriend had roped her into this scheme during the second week of our break. The idea was simple: get her sister to hit on me, see if I'd take the bait, and then catch me in the act. That way, my girlfriend could say she'd been justified in all her jealousy from the start. It was twisted, but it fit her perfectly. She'd always been obsessed with being right, no matter how crazy she had to get to prove it. By the second week of the pause, I was settling into the routine of being on my own. Work kept me busy, and I started hitting the gym more just to clear my head. My girlfriend's texts were still coming, but they were sporadic, nothing too pushy yet. I had no clue what she was up to behind the scenes. She'd already talked to her sister and laid out the whole plan. The way it was supposed to go down was pretty straightforward. Her sister would reach out to me, act friendly, and suggest we hang out. Then she'd turn on the charm, maybe flirt a little, and see if I'd cross any lines. My girlfriend would be waiting in the wings to swoop in and catch me if I did. Her sister didn't waste much time getting started. I got a text from her one afternoon, totally out of the blue. She said she'd been thinking about me, and asked how I was holding up with the break. It caught me off guard. We'd never texted one-on-one before. I figured maybe she was just checking in because of her sister, so I replied politely. Told her I was fine, just taking it day by day. She kept the conversation going, asking random stuff like what I'd been up to and if I was free sometime soon. I didn't think much of it at first. She wasn't being obvious or anything, just casual. But looking back, that was the first step in their setup. My girlfriend was banking on me being dumb enough to fall for it. She'd convinced herself I was a cheater all along, and this was her chance to get proof. She'd even told her sister exactly what to say, how to act, all of it. They'd worked out a spot to meet, a coffee shop near my place, where my girlfriend could watch from a distance if I showed up. The whole thing was calculated. I didn't suspect a thing yet though. I was just trying to keep my life simple, not realizing they were about to turn it into a trap. A couple days after her first text, my girlfriend's sister stepped it up. She messaged me again, this time with a clear pitch. She said she'd been bored lately, and wanted to grab coffee or something. Suggested we meet up at this place near my apartment, a little spot I'd been to a few times. She kept it low-key, saying it'd be nice to catch up since we hadn't talked much lately. I didn't see any red flags. It sounded innocent enough, and I wasn't doing much that weekend anyway. I told her I'd think about it and let her know. That was my first mistake, leaving the door open. What I didn't realize was that my girlfriend had picked that coffee shop for a reason. It's got big windows and a clear view from the street. Perfect for her to sit outside or in her car and watch everything go down. She told her sister to push for that spot specifically. The plan was for her sister to get me there, start flirting, maybe lean in close or touch my arm, something small but enough to look bad if you're paranoid like my girlfriend. Then she'd swoop in, snap a photo or confront me, and boom, she'd have her evidence. She was dead set on proving I couldn't be trusted. I sat on the invite for a day. Part of me thought it'd be fine, just a quick coffee, no harm done. But something felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it, just a gut thing. Maybe it was because her sister had never reached out like this before. Or maybe it was the timing, with the pause still fresh. I started wondering why she'd want to hang out now, out of nowhere. I didn't connect it to my girlfriend yet, didn't even cross my mind they'd team up like that. But I wasn't ready to say yes either. I texted back that I'd let her know tomorrow, buying myself some time to figure it out. The next day rolled around, and I still hadn't decided about the coffee meetup. My girlfriend's sister texted me again, nothing pushy, just a quick, "So you in?" I stared at the message for a while. That weird feeling in my gut was getting stronger. I started replaying the last couple years in my head, every fight, every accusation my girlfriend threw at me. She'd always been paranoid about me cheating, even with zero proof. And now her sister, who I barely talked to, was suddenly all friendly? It didn't add up. I wasn't paranoid like my girlfriend, but I wasn't stupid either. I thought about texting my girlfriend to see what she'd say. Maybe ask if she knew her sister was reaching out. But I stopped myself. If I was wrong, it'd just start another fight. She'd twist it into me hiding something. If I was right, she'd deny it anyway. Either way, I'd get nowhere. So I kept it to myself and dug a little deeper on my own. I remembered how my girlfriend always said I'd end up with someone close to her if we ever split. She'd even joked about her sister once, saying she'd steal me if I wasn't careful. I'd laughed it off back then. Now it didn't seem so funny. Her sister's texts were still sitting there, waiting for an answer. I could have just said no and shut it down, but I wanted to see where this was going. Not because I was into her, I wasn't, but because I needed to know if my girlfriend was behind it. I told her sister I'd meet her tomorrow afternoon at the coffee shop. She replied fast, saying she'd be there at 2 p.m. I didn't feel good about it, but I figured showing up was the only way to figure out what was really happening. Worst case, it'd be a quick coffee and I'd leave. Best case, I'd catch them in their own game. The day of the coffee meetup came fast. I woke up feeling off, like I was walking into something I couldn't quite predict. I almost bailed. My girlfriend's sister hadn't texted again after confirming the time, which made me second-guess everything even more. But I'd already said yes, and backing out now felt like letting that good feeling win without proof. So I got ready, threw on a jacket, and headed to the coffee shop. It was a short walk from my place, just a few blocks. The whole way there, I kept scanning the street, half expecting to see my girlfriend lurking somewhere. I got there a few minutes early. The place was busy, people in line, tables full, baristas shouting orders. I grabbed a spot near the window and waited. My girlfriend's sister showed up right at 2 p.m., walking in like it was no big deal. She smiled, said hi, and sat down across from me. We ordered coffee, and she started chatting, asked about work, the break, how I was holding up. It was normal stuff. Too normal, maybe. I kept my answers short, watching her for anything weird. She didn't flirt, didn't lean in, didn't do anything obvious. If this was a setup, she was playing it cool. What I didn't know was that my girlfriend was already there. She parked across the street, out of sight, with a clear view through those big windows. She told her sister to wait for the right moment, maybe when I relaxed a little, then turn up the charm. The plan was still on track from her end. She had her phone ready, waiting to snap a picture or storm in if anything looked suspicious. I didn't see her though. I was too focused on her sister, trying to read between the lines of every word she said. The coffee came, and we kept talking, but I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched. We'd been at the coffee shop for about 20 minutes. My girlfriend's sister was still keeping it casual, asking about my job, mentioning some show she'd watched. I started to relax a little, thinking maybe I'd overreacted. She hadn't done anything flirty, hadn't crossed any lines. I figured I'd finish my coffee and head out soon. That's when things shifted. She leaned forward slightly, lowered her voice, and said she'd always thought I was a good guy. Said she didn't get why her sister was so hard on me. It wasn't over the top, but it felt like a pivot, like she was testing the waters. I didn't bite. I just nodded, said thanks, and kept it neutral. Told her the break was probably for the best. She smiled, but I caught a flicker of something in her eyes, disappointment maybe. That's when I glanced out the window. I wasn't even looking for anything specific, just letting my eyes wander. And there she was. My girlfriend, sitting in her car across the street, staring right at us. She didn't see me spot her, she was too focused on her sister, probably waiting for that big moment to pounce. It hit me all at once. This wasn't just a random meetup. They'd set me up, and I'd walked right into it. I didn't let on that I'd seen her. I turned back to her sister, kept the conversation going like nothing was wrong. My mind was racing though. I wasn't mad, not yet, just stunned at how far she'd go. Her sister didn't know I'd clocked the plan either. She kept talking, even threw in a light compliment about my jacket. I could tell she was trying to nudge things along, but I wasn't playing. I finished my coffee, said I had to get going, and stood up. She looked surprised but didn't push it. I left cash on the table and walked out, knowing my girlfriend was still watching. I walked out of the coffee shop and headed straight home. I didn't look back at my girlfriend's car, didn't want her to know I'd seen her. My head was spinning. The whole thing was so messed up. She dragged her sister into this just to prove some point she'd been obsessed with for years. I wasn't even hurt anymore, just done. I got back to my place, locked the door, and sat on the couch, replaying it all. The texts, the invite, the way her sister acted, it was a setup from the start. And the one thing that saved me was catching her watching. If I hadn't looked out that window, she might have twisted it into something it wasn't. She texted me an hour later. Said she'd heard I'd met up with her sister and wanted to know what was going on. I didn't buy the act for a second. She wasn't subtle, she never was. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I called her sister. She picked up, sounding nervous. I asked her point blank if my girlfriend had put her up to it. She hesitated, then admitted it. Said my girlfriend had begged her to help, test me, swore it'd fix our relationship. I told her it was over, me and my girlfriend were through. She didn't argue, just said she was sorry and hung up. Then I texted my girlfriend back. Kept it short, told her I knew about the plan, saw her outside the coffee shop, and that we were done for good. No pause, no second chances, just done. She blew up my phone after that, calls, texts, voicemails. Said I was overreacting, that she only did it because she loved me. I didn't answer. Blocked her number, blocked her sister's too. I'd spent 2 years dealing with her jealousy, and this was the last straw. She almost got what she wanted, almost made me the bad guy, but that one glance out the window ruined it for her.